Okay, so let's get started. We'll start with the major currency pairs. The first pair we'll be looking at is the Australian dollar USD. And as you know, normally we start with the weekly time frame. Let me delete all these lines. I need to know the trend for the week. That's why I start with the weekly time frame. Okay, so now looking at the price action on the weekly time frame, it is obvious that the sellers are still in control, right? But this week, I would be looking for possibility to buy Australian dollar USD. So what I need to do here is identify resistance and support for last week markets. I would also be getting the pivot points of last week bearish candle. Okay, so let's go down to daily. Let's see what we have on daily. Okay, so on daily, last Friday candle closed as a doji, which indicates change in trend from bearish to bullish. But as you know, we can't just jump in and start buying after the formation of a doji. We have to wait for the next candle to close bullish before we execute a buy trade, right? So the close of the candle will determine if Australian dollar USD will be bullish for the week. If Monday candle closes bullish, then we could consider buying Australian dollar USD. Okay. Now, at what price should we consider buying? We need to identify resistance and support for Friday market. Okay, so we'll be going down to 4 hours to identify the resistance and support for Friday market. Okay. So on Friday, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So we had these 6 candles on 4-hour time frame. So our support for Friday market will be this, and our resistance would be this. Okay, so since we're interested in buying Australian dollar USD, we should wait for 4-hour candle to close above this resistance. Okay, if you don't want to wait for Monday candle to close bullish before you execute buy on Tuesday, ensure that a 4-hour candle closes above this resistance level before you buy. That's my take on Australian dollar USD. We could also get the pivot point of weekly candle. Okay. Now, how do you get the pivot of a candle? You add up the high low close price of the candle and divide it by 3. If the market is trading above the pivot point, it indicates that the trend is bearish, or it indicates that the sentiment is bearish. If the market is trading below the pivot point, it indicates that we have more sellers than buyers, which indicates bearish sentiment. I hope that is clear. To get the pivot point of a candle, you add up the high low close price of the candle divided by 3. Whatever value you get is your pivot value. If the market is trading above the pivot, it indicates that we have more buyers in the market. It indicates bullish sentiment. And if the market is trading below the pivot point, it indicates bearish sentiment. So what we're going to do here is to get the pivot of last week candle. Now, when you're calculating pivot, I always advise or suggest that you use a strong bearish candle or a strong bullish candle. The range of the candle shouldn't be less than 50 pips. The range of the candle shouldn't be less than 60 pips. What do I mean? When you subtract the opening price from the closing price, the range shouldn't be less than 50 pips. I hope that is clear. When you want to make use of pivot point analysis, you ensure that the range of the candle you are using for your pivot calculation is not less than 50 pips. I hope that is clear. I think this is the first time I'm teaching pivot point, so pay attention. So I'm adding up the high-low close of this candle, 0.6521 plus 0.6364 plus 0.6403 divide. Okay, so this is our pivot point for last week candle. I always use the red color for my weekly pivots. So you can see this is the weekly pivots. You can see that last week candle closed below the weekly pivots, which indicates that we have more sellers in the market than buyers. So if we were to execute any trade, we're supposed to sell. But the reason we would not sell is that last Friday candle closed as a doji, which indicates change in trend. I hope you're getting me. The market closed below the pivot point, which indicates bearish sentiment. But because last Friday candle closed doji, we should be looking for buy opportunity and not sell. Because this doji indicates weakness. It indicates that the sellers, the bears, are becoming weaker. They are getting exhausted. And there's a possibility for price to start going up. That is the reason we will not consider selling. Now, before you buy, a candle must close above this resistance. This, pivot point. A candle must close above this pivot. You would also note that the pivot is the high price of this doji. So we could say there's a confluence, right, between the pivot and the high of this candle. So if a candle is able to close above this pivot level, you should consider buying Australian dollar USD. My buyers on Australian dollar USD this week is buy. I'm looking for buy setup on Australian dollar USD. So if a 4-hour candle closes above this pivot value, I would buy. Remember I said when we used resistance and support, I said wait for 4-hour candle to close above this resistance. You would see that on 4-hour. That it's a resistance level on 4-hour, okay? Can you see it? So if the market closes above this resistance level, I said you should buy. Now, what's the difference between 6415 and 6429? That's just 14 pips. So there's a high probability that the 4-hour candle that will close above this resistance would also close above this, what's it called, pivot point. But if the 4-hour candle that would close above this resistance does not close above the pivot, you can still go ahead and buy if a 4-hour candle closes above this resistance. Okay, so that's my take on Australian dollar USD. But if a candle closes below this support, there's a high probability that price will keep dropping. If a 4-hour candle closes below this support, there's a high probability that price will keep falling. Now, if 4-hour closes below this support, it could also be that they want to hunt for stop losses at this low. The move could just be to sweep liquidity or stop losses at this low or this. So it could be a false breakout. Okay, it could be a false breakout. So like I said, I would be looking for buy opportunities. I don't have any interest in selling Australian dollar USD this week. So that's it for Australian dollar USD. I would be buying Australian dollar USD above this zone. This is my supply zone. This is my supply zone. Okay. So that's it for Australian dollar USD. Let's move to the next pair. New Zealand USD and Australian dollar USD are positively correlated. If you look at the charts now, you would see that the NZD USD chart will be similar to what we have on Australian dollar USD. But let's just look at you can see. So apply the same concepts, okay, on Australian dollar USD. Sorry, on New Zealand USD, okay? So we'll start with the weekly time frame. It is very important that you know the trend on the weekly time frame. As a trader, you start with the weekly time frame. Know the trend on the weekly time frame. The weekly time frame trend would determine trades you would execute on lower time frame. Never trade against the long-term trend. The market will always follow the long-term trend. Okay, so let's start with the weekly. So the first thing I want us to do here is to identify resistance and support. Let's go to last week candle close bearish. You can see the trend has been bearish for some time, right? It's been bearish. Okay, at the moment it is still bearish if we go by the weekly what's it called, price action. Okay, but let's see what we have on daily. So you can see on daily we had doji on Friday, which indicates change in trend. Okay, now let's go back to before we go back to weekly, what you need to do on daily is to identify the resistance and support for last Friday market, resistance and support for last Friday market. Let's go to 4-hour. It's on 4-hour we'll find resistance and support. Okay, so this was Friday resistance. Okay, and the support, this was the support. So it's either price breaks support or breaks the resistance. Okay, if price breaks the support, there is a high probability that price will keep dropping, and it could also be that the move would be to hunt for the stop losses at these lows. You can see there are a lot of stop losses and sell stop price down to hunt for the stop losses at this level. So you've got to know what you're doing. Okay, for me, price has already gone far. It will not be wise for me to jump in and start selling because this is where price started dropping. I should have entered sell from this point. How many pips has this pair done from this point? It has done over 100, right? You can see it has done over 161 pips. It will not be wise for one to start selling at the current market price. Before you consider selling, you should see price pull back at least to 50% of this move. You can apply your Fibonacci, take it from this swing high to this swing low. Before you jump in and sell, you should wait for price to pull back to at least 50%, which is equilibrium, or patiently wait for price to pull back to a premium zone, premium level, which is above level 50, 61.8 and 79.0 are premium levels. So you should wait for price to pull back before you start selling. Okay. So like I said, we have a doji on the daily time frame, and we have identified the resistance and support on 4-hour time frame. So let's go back to weekly. On the weekly, we would be getting the, what's it called? The pivot. Like I said, the range of the candle should be at least 50 pips. Let's see, from the opening to the closing. Yeah, so this is qualified, right? It's a strong bearish candle. So we can use this for our pivot calculation. So you don't just trade with or analyze the market with one strategy. You should have at least two strategies. Two strategies, okay? So let's use pivot on the weekly. We are adding up the high, low, close price, then divide it by 3. Whatever value we get is our pivot value, 0.5996 plus 0.5902 plus 0.5923. And whenever you use a bearish candle for your pivot, the market would always close below the pivot. The market will always be trading below the pivot if you use a bearish candle for your pivot calculation. Okay, and if you go by the basic concept of pivot, you will jump in and start selling because the candle closed below the pivot. Let me change the color this time because I used it on red for resistance and support. Let me change it to yellow. So you can see, let's go to 4-hour. You can see the resistance and pivot are almost at the same level. You can see it. It was a previous support here, some resistance. Pivot and resistance are at the same level. That should tell you that this level is a key level. So if a 4-hour candle closes above this resistance, one can consider buying New Zealand USD. Okay, since resistance and the pivot value are at the same level. You can see that the last candle on Friday closed bearish. It closed below the pivot. A lot of people will jump in and start selling because the candle closed below the pivot. But when you look at the daily, the formation you have on daily contradicts the pivot setup, right? Pivot says sell, but the daily candle, which is this doji, says, man, the sellers are getting exhausted. There's a high probability that price is likely going to pull back. If Monday candle closes bullish, then we should expect more bullish move on New Zealand USD next week. Okay, but if you don't want to wait for the Monday candle to close, wait for 4-hour candle to close above this zone, this resistance or pivot value, before you consider buying. Okay, so that's it for New Zealand USD. Let's look at GBP USD. We should have similar setup on GBP USD. You can see GBP USD has been ranging for some time. It's been ranging for some time. So technically, GU is bullish. It is bullish technically. I think the essence of last week of price action was to hunt for the stop losses at this level. I shared a video earlier on. Okay, what they did was to clear liquidity, sweep liquidity at these lows. Okay, and you'd see last week candle closed as a spinning bottom. The previous candle closed as a spinning bottom too, but it was a bearish spinning bottom. And buying after because of a bearish spinning bottom is very risky. Okay, it's very risky because it's bearish. So you have to wait for the next candle to close bullish before you buy. And you can see last week candle closed bullish. So you will see that this bullish candle is not a strong bullish candle. the range of this candle is less than, I think it's less than 20 or 30 pips. So we wouldn't be using this for pivot. So what we need to work with in this case is resistance and support. So we're going down to daily time frame or 4-hour time frame to identify resistance and support. So the resistance for last week market, this will be our resistance on daily for last week market. But on 4-hour, let's say on 4-hour, our resistance on 4-hour will be this for last week market. Okay, so this will be our supply zone, or you call it your resistance zone. Okay, this will be your resistance zone. Then our support for last week, let me go back to daily. This will be our support on daily. Let's go down to 4-hour to identify our support. And this will be our support for last week. So we now have demand zone and supply zone, support zone and demand zone, resistance zone, support zone. Okay, so if a candle closes above this resistance, you should buy this zone. That will be a buy. And if a candle closes below this support zone, you could consider selling. You should consider selling if a candle closes below this. But I think selling GBP USD this coming week will be very risky. The risk, because the probability that price will go up is higher than its probability of going down. So, but if you're considering selling, you should wait for price to break this low. I will attend to all your questions. Okay, I will take your questions after we are done with the 7 major currency pairs. Okay, I'll take your questions. So sell below this zone, buy above this zone. Personally, I would be buying GBP USD this coming week. Okay, price started dropping from this level. If I'd wanted to sell, I should have joined the trend earlier, the bearish trend. So I'm expecting a pullback. It could be a pullback. It could also be a change of trend. Okay, so you could apply your Fibonacci. You could take it from here. Okay, so price should pull back to a premium level before you consider selling. For those who are seeing sell on the charts, okay, if you're seeing a sell setup, wait for price to pull back to 61.8 or 79.0 before you sell. Okay, that's my take on GBP USD. You could also take it from this point, this swing high. Okay, so we should see price pull back to at least 61.8. You can see 61.8 is also a resistance level. That makes that level a key level. Okay, so you could wait. 50 is not a key level. The reason being that we don't have a support or resistance at that level. So if price will pull back, it's likely going to hit 61.8. Next pair is on Euro USD. So let's start with the weekly time frame. Okay, last week candle was strongly bearish. And I think the purpose of last week price action was to hunt for these previous lows. Okay. We also had a previous resistance here, turn support. So I think liquidity at these lows has been swept. Okay. So what we need to do now is get the pivots of, or let's identify resistance and supports before we get the pivots. Let's go to daily. What do we have on daily? You can see doji indicating change in trend from bearish to bullish. Okay, so let's go down to 4-hour. So our resistance for Friday markets will be this. This is our resistance. And this is our support. Okay. We also had the resistance here. Okay. You could also identify the low of this candle so that you have a support zone and the resistance zone. Now let's go down to weekly and get the pivots. I think the range of this candle is above 50. I think it's above 50. The opening to closing, okay, it's above 50. This is about 73 pips, so we can use it for our pivots calculation. Okay. So you can see our pivot value is in between these resistance levels. Okay, so if a 4-hour candle closes above this zone, you can consider buying. If 4-hour candle closes above this zone, you should consider buying. If 4-hour closes below this zone, you might want to sell Euro USD. But I think this week, Euro USD would be bullish this week. So I'd rather look for buy opportunities than sell. Okay. So that's my take on Euro USD. Let's look at USD CAD. USD CAD is negatively correlated with Euro USD. I'm just going to execute one trade on each of these pairs. One trade, and it's going to run for the whole week. And my target is between 80 to 100 pips. My risk on this trade must not exceed 40 pips. My risk on each trade would not exceed 40 pips. My TP is between 80 and 100 pips. So let's start with the weekly time frame. So you can see the range of the weekly candle is more than 50. So we can use it for pivots. Open, so this is about 110 pips. So let's get the pivots. We are adding up the high, low, close price, then divide the value by 3. Okay, that's how we get the pivot value. We are adding up the high, low, close price of the candle, then we divide whatever value we get by 3. Okay, so that's our pivot. So that's our pivot for the week. Let's go down to daily. What do we have on daily? What do we have on daily? You can see we had last Friday candle close as a spinning top, right? Close as a spinning top. So we need to identify the resistance and support for that candle, okay? Which is Friday candle. So our resistance, this is our resistance, and this is our support. So this is our demand zone. Let's see on 1 hour. Okay, so this would be our supply zone, resistance zone, support zone. So if you are considering selling USD card, my bias on USD card this week is bearish. You should sell below this support zone. The 4-hour candle must close below this zone. And if you're considering buying, buy above this zone. But I don't think it would be wise to buy. Okay, considering where price started going up, you can see USD card has been bullish for several weeks or months. It's been bullish. This is where the price started going up from this point. And it has done over 340 pips. It has done over 340 pips. So it will not be wise to start buying at the current market price. It is only FOMO that will make you want to buy USD card at the current market price. We should see price pull back to a discount level before we consider buying. So we should see price pull back to 61.8 or 79.0 before we consider buying. Buying USD card at the current market price is at a very high risk. Okay, that's my take on USD card. Look for sell opportunity this coming week. Okay, which other pair is left? Which other pair? Which other pair? USD CHF and USD JPY. Let's start with the weekly. You can see last week candle closed as a shooting star. This is a shooting star, which indicates change in trend from bullish to bearish. Okay, so let's go down to daily. What do we have on daily? You can see we had a bearish candle. Last Friday closed as bearish. Okay, so we need to identify the supports. Okay, so if a 4-hour candle closes below this support, I would be selling USD JPY. If 4-hour candle closes below this support, I would sell USD JPY. This time we wouldn't be getting a pivot value because the range of this candle, the body of the candle is less than 50 pips. So we wouldn't be getting the pivot value of this candle. Would only work with resistance and support. So the resistance for last week, this is the resistance for last week markets. This is resistance on 4 hour. Let's go to 1 hour. 10 minutes. Okay, so this is a support on 15 minutes. So we have a zone now, we have a support zone to work with, and the resistance zone to work with. Okay, so I would be selling USD below this zone, and I will be buying above this zone, but the trend is bearish. The trend has changed from bullish to bearish. Okay, so you should consider selling. We could see price pull back to this zone before price start dropping. It's also possible for a candle to close below this zone. Okay, so that's my expectation on USD JPY. Price pulls back to this zone, sell, or a 4-hour candle closes below this support. Okay, the last pair is USD CHF. Start the weekly. Strongly bullish. Right, last week candle close bullish. So it's bullish. So this is above 50 pip, right? So we can get our pivot value on this candle. 0.8827 points. Okay, so you can see we had this was a support, not resistance, which has become a support. Okay, this was a resistance. It has become a support after this candle closed above it. And you can see, I think what they did last Friday was to clear the buy stop orders and stop losses at this level, the high of this candle. And if you go back, you will see that it was a previous support turn resistance. So there's a probability that price is likely going to start dropping from that level. Okay, so before you sell, you should wait for a candle to close below the pivot. Wait for a candle to close below the pivot before you sell. Let's go down to 4-hour. What do we have on 4-hour? Okay. So this is an hanging man. This is a bullish hanging man. The bullish hanging man. And after the formation of a bullish candle, it is expected that the next candle closes bearish before we sell. But the next candle closed bullish, so we cannot sell. We cannot sell. If the next 4-hour candle closes bearish, then we can consider selling. If the next 4-hour candle closes bearish. Okay, we could also identify support and resistance of this candle, this 4-hour candle. Let's go to 1 hour. Okay, so you can see we had a resistance here. We also had a support here. You can see it was a previous resistance. Some support. Can you see it? So you should wait for a bearish candle to close below this support before you consider selling. Okay, wait for a bearish candle. You cannot jump in and start selling at the current market price. The bulls are still in charge. So before you start selling, you should wait for a candle to close below this support. Okay, that's my take on USD CHF. I think this bullish move was to hunt for stop losses and buy stop orders at these levels. And I think that they have achieved. Okay. So let me take your questions. Mr. Makinwa, your hand was up. You can unmute your mic, Mr. Makinwa.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening,
Thanks
sir.
so much for your time and for the effort.
You're welcome, sir.
Really appreciate it. God bless you. Yes, my question is on that GDP USD. When we're trying to when we're trying to find the support and resistance on 4 hours, the previous one, I realized that you counted 6 candles on that 4 hour to make it for a day.
Yes.
Before we identify, but on that GDP USD, it's like we didn't do that. So I don't know, can we use it interchangeably, whether to use daily or 4 hours? That's my question.
Now, let's look at the daily, okay? You can identify your resistance on 4 hour or daily time frame.
Okay.
You can use the daily or 4 hour time frame. Sometimes you won't find resistance and support on daily. That is why we go down to 4 hour.
Okay, for that day before, Abi?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You could see this is the weekly candle, right?
Yes.
If we go down to daily, if we have resistance and support on the daily, we can work with the support and resistance on the daily time frame. So 5 candles, right? Makes up 5 daily candles makes up 1 weekly candle. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right?
Yes, sir.
So this will be our resistance. But when trading resistance and support, you always advise to treat it as a zone, not just a level.
Okay.
Treat it as a zone, not just a level. Okay. Because if, for example, price might close above this resistance and you would think that's a breakout, a valid breakout. But if you identify this previous resistance, you would have a zone. So a candle might close above this level and not close above this level.
To break that,
You get it. So don't treat your resistance and support as just a level. Work with a zone. Okay, so you could also, if you're not identifying the resistance on this daily, this 4 hour time frame. Okay, so after the close of this candle on 4 hour, we should have a resistance on 4 hour. Let's go to 4 hour. So you can see on 4 hour. Can you see this?
Okay.
So always work with 2 resistance level. 2 resistance level will give you a zone, right?
Yes.
Then we go back to daily. Our support for last week on daily would be this, right?
Okay, yes.
So after identifying that, you might want to identify this previous support on daily, okay, so that you have a zone to work with, right?
Okay, yes.
Or you could also identify this previous, what's it called? Resistance turn support.
Okay, I think that's even, is it a morning star now?
This one?
Previously, no, the previous week. That play.
Which one?
This? Yes, this. Is that not the morning star?
For me, this is an engulfing.
Combination. Yes.
Yeah. This combination of the 3, right?
Yes.
Okay, but for me, I'll just work with this and this. So this is engulfing for me. Yeah, this is an engulfing pattern.
Okay.
So let's go down to 4 hour. It's most likely the support on 4 hour would also be at this level. So let's go down to 4 hour. So if the support on 4 hour is also at this level, so it is best to work with this support instead of this one or this one. Okay, so let's go to 4 hour. So you can see support on 4 hour. This is it here. So work with this.
Yes.
So this is our support zone for last week, and this is our resistance zone for last week. You could call it your supply zone, demand zone. Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope that is clear.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Any other question? If you have any question, please unmute your mic. If you have any question, please unmute your mic. Unmute your mic. Mr. Said, if there's any instrument you want us to analyze together, let me know. Mr. Emmanuel, Mrs. Peters, you have any question? No question. Mr. Emmanuel, do you have any question? Can you hear me, Mr. Emmanuel? Mr. Said, can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah. Mr. Emmanuel, do you have any question?
Yeah, sorry, your analysis on USD card. I'm not clear with the identification of the support and resistance. I don't know if you can just kindly go through.
USD card. Okay. So we'll start with the weekly. Let me delete all this. You know, USD card is negatively correlated with GBP USD, Australian dollar USD, New Zealand USD. So if we're looking for opportunity to buy those pairs, you should look for sell setup on USD card, and you will see that the candlestick formation, the price action on USD card is the opposite of what we have on GBP USD, New Zealand USD, Euro USD. Okay, on those pairs, we had a doji forming a downward trend, which indicates change in trend. On USD card, we have a spinning top, or you could call it a doji in an upward trend, which indicates change in trend from bullish to bearish. You would also notice that price tested this previous resistance, some support. You can see that is the reason for this rejection. Okay, they didn't get to that level, but the goal was to hit this resistance level. Okay, that was the goal. Okay, so we had a spinning top. Okay, and like I said, for us to get a pivot of a candle, the range of the candle, that is the difference between the opening and the closing price of that candle, mustn't be less than 50 pips. Okay, it must not be less than 50 pips. And what we had on the weekly, okay, yeah, so we start with the weekly. So the range of this candle is more than 50 pips. So the first thing I did was to get the pivot of this bullish candle. Okay, and I believe you know how we got the pivot value. We added the high-low close price of the candle and divided the value by 3. Okay, let me do that again. 1.3574 plus 1.3433 plus 1.3550 divide 3. So this is our pivot. And like I said, if you use a bullish candle for your pivots calculation, the market would always close above the pivot, or the candle would always close above the pivot, indicating that the market is bullish. Okay, it is bullish. Now, the reason we don't want to jump in and buy is that first, price started moving from this point. Price has already gone far. This is about 353 pips. That's one of the reasons we will not jump in and buy. If all you knew was just pivot point analysis, you would want to jump in and buy because the market closed above the pivots. The basic concept or basic rules of trading pivot points is to buy when a candle closes above the pivots. Do you get it? So the reason we wouldn't be considering buying is that price has already gone far. Okay. Also, when we move down to daily, we see here that the candlestick formation indicates weakness, right? Indicates that the buyers are becoming weaker, and there's a high probability that price will drop from that level. But we wouldn't just jump in because we have a doji or a spanning top on the daily time frame. We wouldn't just jump in and start selling. You know how to trade candlestick formation. After the close of the candlestick, the bearish reversal candlestick, you have to wait for the next candle to close bearish before you sell. We need to be sure that there are sellers in the market before we start selling. And the only way to confirm that is for the next candle to close bearish. Okay, so this is what we have on the daily. Let's go down to 4 hour. Now on 4 hour, what we want to identify is the resistance and support for Friday's market. That is what we want to identify on 4 hour, the resistance and support. So let's go to 4 hour. So on 4 hour, Friday, this is our support. And this is our resistance. And this is our pivot. I would have suggested, okay, identify this support, but we don't need this, okay? We don't need this. We have the Friday support and the pivot value. So we are working with the pivot and the support. So we have our demand zone, or you call it your support zone, and we have our resistance zone. If you are considering buying, you wait for price to break the resistance zone. If you are considering selling, like me, I'm considering selling USD CAD this coming week. So you should wait for a bearish candle to close below this support zone. Okay, let's go to 1 hour. Okay, now I want you to see this. Now you'll see that USD CAD has been a series of higher high, higher low, right? Higher high, higher low. Where is our last higher low here? Okay, this should be it, or this, right? Higher low. So you can see this higher low is in between our demand zone. Can you see that? So if a 4 hour candle would close below this zone, that tells you that the structure has changed, right? From bullish structure to bearish structure. So that tells you that there's a confluence between the structure, market structure, resistance and support, and also pivots. 3 strategies indicating that the trend has changed, confirming that we have more sellers in the market. Can you see that? Okay, so that's my take on USD CAD. I hope that answered your questions, Mr. Emmanuel. I hope it's clear now.
Very well, sir. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Mr. Godwin? I've taken your question, right? Do you have any question, Mr. Godwin? Okay, I think that will be all for tonight's session. I appreciate you all for your participation in tonight's session, and I wish you all a wonderful night. I wish you all a profitable trading week. Okay. If you have any question, you have my WhatsApp number. You can always drop me a message. And as usual, I would always post on the broadcast list for any updates. Okay. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. God bless.
You're welcome. You're welcome.